Hey, Gavin.
Hey, Louie.
Oh my God, happy. Do you feel the love, Gavin? I feel the love.
My heart is cold and dead.
So no is what you're saying.
So yes, is what I'm saying.
I don't want to know what you consider love in your life, Gavin.
You sound like all my exes.
Oh my God, Gavin, literally the other night, I was barraged by a mega mix of burlesque, like a music mega mix of burlesque.
I sent it your way. It was me.
Derek was like, wait, are all these songs burlesque? I was like, yes, it is. Okay.
I was sitting in this back room in my apartment.
Yeah.
Looking at Dan going, tell Louis it was me.
You were like controlling the drone that follows me around. It just yells air rates at me. Air rates!
But anyways, for those of you who are listening to us, we are the Mixed Reviews. We are a film podcast in which we take a film subject, such as an actor, director, or a mini genre, and we give you a complete history. And then we talk about what we like and what we don't like so much.
Yeah, the reviews, they are mixed. We talk about the good, we talk about the bad. We watch as much as we can in 2 weeks. And guess what? Sometimes we bring friends.
We do.
So please welcome to the stage, guys. We have here a podcast gal of around town. She is everywhere. We have Miss Chelsea here joining us after, I feel, Chelsea, you've been like one of our ride or dies for such a long time. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you for inviting me. I did leave a review 1,000 years ago saying I was tech available. And You know what? We have to manifest our dreams.
Absolutely. Chelsea, I don't even know. I know you have. Well, let's talk about. We'll give you your plugs after when we're done. How about that? Before I get ahead of myself, I'm just so excited.
But you are literally like a maven, a mogul at this point.
Yes.
You have so many podcasts out, and I mean, doing this one is a lot. I can't imagine. How do you find the time?
I just don't sleep.
How does she do it?
How does she do it?
I stay up. It's a lot of coffee, a lot of tea, a lot of texting my producers. Why? And the inability to say no to people.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. She's followed me around a long while.
I was gonna say, runs deep within me.
Yeah. We have some old business before we dive into our new episode. Our last episode, we talked all about the iconic and the recently departed Miss Cicely Tyson. And we asked you guys to go online and vote for your favorite movie. And the results are in. In last place with 5% was The River Niger. 10% was Roots. A really close first and second place. We had 40% with Sounder, and 45% goes to the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, which was both me and Gavin's pick.
Yes, absolutely.
Is correct.
And honestly, if you have not seen the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, it is on HBO Max. And once again, we do not receive any money from HBO Max. But if you want to sponsor us, we are available. We are
they should pay you.
Yeah,
absolutely. Please. Chels, before we move ahead, I wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite Cicely Tyson movie or memory that you really love?
So I do have a good memory. A few years ago, I got to go to the Creative Arts Emmys with a friend of mine, and they dragged out Cicely Tyson. And to this day, my friend Shannon, happy birthday, Shannon, basically, they dragged her out and she looked so annoyed with everybody and she just gave people dirty looks around her. And I'm like, that's who I want to be when I'm older. Just like somebody that gets a standing ovation and just can give withering looks. That's who I want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
She was amazing. I love her.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick just one. So I'm glad that you got a good little range there.
Yeah. I feel like if anyone could be just dragged out and give looks, it's like, yeah, she fucking deserves it and can do it.
Yeah,
we applaud you, Miss Cicely Tyson.
Rest in power, please, because I still cannot believe that it was just in the zeitgeist, I guess. But
I know, it's so weird because we try to be timely. Often we can't, especially now with movies just coming out whenever. Yeah. And we very accidentally were the most timely with the Cicely Tyson episode. And I was thinking, I was like, man, it sounds like we were being so opportunistic there, but like we really didn't plan that at all.
No, not at all. There's a lot of forethought that goes into this. And so, it's all just weird kismet. But for
real.
I'm happy that we got a chance to experience her films. And
yes, and thank you to our listener who gave us the idea to do Cicely Tyson. So listeners out there, hit us up.
Absolutely. You can always email us at reviewsmixed@gmail.com. Before we move in to our current subject, which is why Chels has been invited here, we do have one new review on Apple Podcasts, and this is a review from Ireland, which is pretty damn cool. The title is My Go-To Movie Podcast, 5 stars. Gavin and Louis managed to take a forensic and vast amount of info in an episode and make it interesting, funny, often surprising, and informative. Can't get enough of these two. A real highlight in my podcast list. There's no BS or gimmicks, just two funny guys passionately diving into topics, and they clearly want to bring you along. Whole lot of fun. So thank you very much. That's from Fitzgerald P. in Ireland.
Fitzgerald P.
No lies detected.
I love the forensic aspect of that. We are CSI movie gals.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the alternative.
not to steal your brand. Not to steal your brand, Chels.
You guys are the only men I acknowledge in the podcast world.
Thank
you
you.
are honorary gals to me.
Thank you. Oh, that means a lot. That means a lot.
Absolutely. Oh my god.
Okay, so Chels, I'm going to let you do the honors. Why have you summoned us here to talk on today's or this week's episode? Who are we covering?
So we're covering the one and only Audrey Hepburn, and I know. And I thought this would be kind of a fun one because she has a contained filmography, but also she's a very misunderstood person in society. People see her as a fashion icon, and like from the time I was little, I like watched Breakfast at Tiffanys and was like trying to understand why, because I was just a curious child about why is this person famous? What is their point? And I just did a bunch of deep dive Wikipedia searches and then found a bunch of books. And I'm like, oh, this is a very complicated person that society has not remembered well.
Right.
They remember the cute things, but there's a lot of other stuff that she's done, and she's done some great humanitarian work.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty heartbreaking story. So I just want to do her some justice.
I love that. It's funny that you say people remember her, because truly now, like in the worst possible sense, like she is the icon that you see at the TJ Maxx like paintings section, you know, or like,
oh yeah, my mom literally got me like TJ Maxx like passport holder with Audrey Hepburn on him. I still have it, like luggage tag, and I was like, what is the point of this?
So it sounds like Audrey's been a part of your life for a long while. It's funny because I think maybe I knew who she was not until like high school, and even then I hadn't seen any of her movies. I really think when we did our Cary Grant episode, Gavin, was the first time I really had seen a full movie of her in it, and that was for Charade, which was my 5-star review. And so I was really happy, Chels, that you suggested this, because I was like, oh, finally, like I now have a reason to go through, because she is iconic, and for better or worse, you know, I think you're right. She is iconic mostly for her looks and these very stylish movies that people kind of like, we know, you know, Breakfast at Tiffany's or My Fair Lady and things like that have kind of stayed in the American canon of Hollywood and, you know, musical theater. But it really diving in and being like, oh, what is an Audrey Hepburn movie without all the style? Like going into these movies where it's like not about the way she looks was very rewarding and interesting to be like, oh, this wasn't just a woman who looked a certain way. She was kind of fucking amazing. She was a really good actress.
Well, it's funny too, and I think you really hit on it when you said the word cute, and I think a lot of people do, as you were just saying too, Louis, that it is a lot of in the American zeitgeist, it's a lot of style over substance, and she is considered Hollywood royalty. I think she was voted like the 3rd most popular female celebrity ever in like the United States a couple of years ago. And it's really interesting to go back through and look at her trajectory, because she was sort of an actor as a means to an end. She wanted to be a dancer, and she was quote unquote too tall for it at the time. Modern dance wasn't really a thing, and you can kind of be any height for modern dance. And you know, she transitioned from these stage shows into film, and she had no formal training in terms of acting.
Right.
Because of this, she never thought of herself as a great actor. She never thought of herself as a great beauty. And I think these are really interesting things because clearly she is both. She would not be remembered the way that she is if she wasn't. And it's not so much just, you know, famous pairings with other actors or famous pairings with, you know, costume designers like, you know, Givenchy and stuff like that. Those helped. Those have kept her sort of fresh in our minds. But I agree. I think that she's a lot more talented and a lot stronger than people give her credit for, and with a much bigger heart. I think people have a very two-dimensional view of who Audrey Hepburn was and what she was capable of. And I think when she was alive, she was sort of constantly proving people wrong. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily the way that she's remembered.
Yeah. She wanted to be a dancer, singer, actor. Unfortunately, she was an actor, singer, dancer. It's hard. It's hard.
But I think that puts us in a really good position. So why don't we move into our rewind and learn a bit more about the history of Miss Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Kathleen Rustin was born May 4th, 1929. She was born in Ixelles, Brussels, which is in Belgium. Her mother was a baroness, Ella van Hemstra. She was a Dutch noblewoman, but the way titles are done in the Netherlands is sort of like, it's a fun thing. It doesn't mean a lot.
It really didn't. 100 years before, they would have had money, but then they were like working class.
Absolutely. So
everybody working class baroness?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was getting a title back then. It was like, you get a title, you get a title. Oprah was just handing them out. Her father, Joseph Victor Anthony Rustin, was a British subject who was born in the Austro-Hungarian Empire in Bohemia. And the best way to put it was like, he was a man of means, but he was a bit like a trumped up sort of individual. He often claimed that, you know, he had aristocratic roots through James Hepburn, who was the husband of Mary, Queen of Scots. This was not true. And he was somebody who like wanted to live above his means. He wasn't, after he married Audrey Hepburn's mother, he would often label himself as a double-barreled last name as Hepburn Rustin because it made himself sound more grand. And the thing is like he thought in marrying a baroness, like the title would sort of, and it doesn't work that way. You know,
it doesn't like go over to him, so he wasn't a baron.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they marry in Batavia in the Dutch East Indies. At the time, he was working at a trading company, and then they sort of started moving all around Europe. He began working for a loan company. They live in London. They end up in Brussels, where he's assigned to open a branch office. I should mention, by the way, Audrey has two older half-brothers. They come from her mother's previous marriage. You're going to hear a little bit more about them, so that's why the only reason I'm bringing them up. And essentially, she's living kind of a life of means. You know, they're not poor off, and she's learning 6 languages.
Casual.
Yeah, just normal for Dutch, English, French, German, Spanish, and Italian. And it's not an easy childhood. Her father is distant, and her mother is cold, is the best way to put it. She teaches her the 2 big important lessons that she takes to her career for the rest of her life, which is that you should never make yourself the center of attention, and everybody else is more important than you are. Everybody else is like emotions and means and and obviously Audrey is not like crushed by these. She makes them into things that she can work with. You know,
it's like a humbling childhood, perhaps. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very, very much not like a reach for the stars, honey, but it's like, help everyone else and get their stars. Fuck you and your stars.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. In the mid-1930s, both of her parents were recruited, and they started collecting donations for the British Union of Fascists, which is exactly what it sounds like.
It was called that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did not subtle at all.
Her mother began writing op-eds, pro-Nazi op-eds. There has been some doubt about whether her mother actually wrote these or if her father penned them and used her mother's name because she had a title. And so it would sound more more regal, I suppose, you know.
A regal Nazi.
And then in 1935, Joseph, her father, leaves. He like goes to England and joins the Black Shirts, which is their fascist party.
Jesus.
Audrey Hepburn says this is the most traumatic moment of her life. Her father leaving the family is the thing that crushed her as a child and led to self-esteem issues for her entire life.
My father leaving us left me insecure for life, perhaps. I do think there are things that, you know, that experiences in childhood form you for the rest of your life. That's also why I'm so concerned with children today, not just that they're starving and so forth, but children that are surrounded by violence and horror, what this is going to do to them.
Her mother decides to send Audrey to England to get her education. It's what Joseph wanted. And funny enough, he ends up working 2 or 3 blocks away from her school and tells her he'll come visit her and never once does.
What the fuck?
Oh yeah, after the divorce, he had visitation rights and he only used it a couple times,
what
give
the
or take.
Fuck?
Yeah.
This guy... and it's like the sense that like he's just really busy being a fascist, like,
you know, it takes him a lot of time.
Mom's not better.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. That's the funny thing, right? Is you would think like it'd be like, but then she had this really loving mother. Nope.
Wow.
Very withholding woman, would always drop the kids off with grandma and grandpa and said she was a citizen of the world.
Everything that I've read, every like lead that I've had about her father says that he was the one who cared more about the title and more about being fancy. But I definitely get the impression that her mother was very similar in that fashion. Maybe not outwardly so, maybe not constantly being like, I'm a baroness, but like, I think that she wanted to live in a very fancy way that she just never grew accustomed to not having.
So it seems like Audrey Hepburn, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like had like this very classical upbringing of like, you know, pampered little pretty girl who has everything except fully like a support system,
yeah,
a family.
Well, it's
pretty much.
It's only going to get worse before it gets better. So
buckle up.
Britain declares war on Germany in September 1939. And her mother is like, well, I don't think you're safe in England, so you got to come back to Arnhem. And she was like, you know what? First World War, Netherlands was great. Nobody touched it. It'll be fine. Hepburn starts attending the Arnhem Conservatory, even though she doesn't really speak Dutch. So it's real like catch up quick.
And they threw her into the school and they're like, oh, you got to learn this. Also, we're going to change your name to Etta because you sound too British right now.
Yes, absolutely.
So
they were like,
after school, she would teach herself Dutch.
Yeah, they were like, British American names? No, thank you. We do not want the Nazis coming for you.
Her name was, so they called her Etta.
Etta van Hemstra.
Yep.
That I was shoved into a Dutch school right away, not knowing a word of Dutch, because my mother was worried about this child speaking English in the streets and Germans all around, and she thought that was rather dangerous. So that was a traumatic experience, to end up in a huge classroom not knowing what word that was being said, and every time I opened my mouth, everybody roaring with laughter. That's just great at that age.
Is she dancing by now? Is she like taking dance?
So she was taking ballet classes in London. When she comes back, she still continues to take ballet classes in the Netherlands, but the Germans invade the Netherlands in 1940. And she says, you know, this is the other big defining moment of her childhood, because essentially she is pretty sure, had they thought the German occupation was going to last more than 6 months, her mother would have shot the children and shot herself.
Jesus. Oh my God.
But it ends up lasting for 5 years.
How old is she when this starts?
About 10.
Yeah, about 10 or 11. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So during this time, she knows right from wrong. Her brothers know right from wrong. And so they decide to start helping out in any way that they think that they can. She starts doing underground concerts to help raise money for the resistance, because the resistance always needed money. She claims that she didn't do this very often, that this only happened a couple times, but she would carry notes inside her shoes for resistance members.
Some stories have been exaggerated about my contribution of bringing around messages occasionally, because there was nobody else to do it, you know, but I did that a couple of times. I was really too young.
One brother ends up being put into a Nazi work camp for his work with resistance. Her other brother goes into hiding for fear of the same thing happening to him. As the war goes on and Germany starts to lose and they're losing their focus on everybody, as a means of punishment, they start to starve the Dutch people.
Jesus.
And so rations dry up and food dries up, and Audrey and her family begin to starve.
During this time, her uncle Otto, who was a magistrate at the time, he's put into a prison. And then as an example, him and 5 other Dutchmen are executed as just like an example because other Dutch resistance fighters messed up a train. So they're executed, one of the real big war crimes in the Netherlands at the time.
There was a knock on the door and they took my uncle away, who 6 months later was shot, and another uncle too. And my brothers went underground. My uncles were the first hostages to be shot in Holland, and it was actually the turning point, because from that day on, an underground was formed. That's when really the hard times started, because that's when so many reprisals were made, and so many people were shot, and so many people were rounded up and imprisoned. And after the first few months, all Jews had to wear yellow stars, and they started being rounded up and taken away in trucks. And I'd go to the station with my mother to take a train to the next city, and I'd see cattle trucks filled with Jews, picking up more, were standing around us. And I remember so well a little boy, little blonde boy. My mother had to explain all this to me. We did then not yet know that they were going to their death. We'd been told they were going to be taken to special camps. And why? It was very hard for me to understand, because I was 11 or something, you know. But those images have never left me.
By this point, Mom's been kind of like, okay, I see these Nazis aren't that great. They're doing some bad things. I'm a little hungry right now.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
good. You said this lasted for 5 years. So
Yeah.
so zoom ahead to, she's 15 now and the family is starving.
Yes, and they're resorting to making, you know, flour out of tulips to bake cakes and biscuits. She ends up developing acute anemia, respiratory problems, and edema, and these are all results of malnutrition.
Wow.
Eventually, the war ends, as history tells us, in 45. There's a very famous story that on the day that the soldiers rolled into town, one of them gave her a chocolate bar and she ate it so fast she instantly became sick. And her mother moves her and her siblings. By the way, her brother that was in the work camp, they assumed was dead. He walks back from Germany.
Jesus.
It's about 300 miles.
Yeah.
Oh.
The family then moves to Amsterdam. She continues her ballet training or starts it up again. However, the being emaciated, this does horrors to the human body.
Absolutely.
And she just never recovers her sort of innate ability for ballet. She still dances a lot and she still does beautiful ballet, but it's not what,
like a professional level, like,
exactly,
you know, world
and
class.
and it just will never be, because of what she suffered during the war.
I can't even imagine, you know, like if you're a 10-year-old and, you know, going through your teenage years in war and then coming out of that, like that's puberty, right? You're going through puberty during war and then coming of age to a young adult, and finally like the world is exhaling, breathing, and like, what the fuck do you even do next? You know, like everything probably feels so silly, so dumb, like if she's just happy to have food to eat, you know, like to want anything else seems a little bit, I don't know, must have been awful.
But I think it also like puts an odd sort of bit in your brain that says, well, now I have the ability to go for these things, and like I've experienced the bad. So like what's a rejection to me? What's somebody telling me I can't do something when like I
literally survived war.
Yeah, 2 years ago I was a skeleton and I thought I was going to die every day. And so I think it also like gives a very sort of like carefree but also focused work attitude on her, because she's just like, well, I got to make it happen now, because who knows when I'm going to go and what's going to happen. And,
yeah, true.
She does, even though they're unsure how far she's going to go as a ballerina, she does receive a scholarship to a ballet school in England. And it's there that they tell her, like, prima ballerina's out, babe. It's not going to happen. And her mother starts working like at restaurants to try and support them. And Audrey starts going on acting gigs, modeling gigs. She appears in a tourism film. And then she lands a job as a dancer in high button shoes in the London Hippodrome, which is a big deal. But she's not super popular amongst the rest of the dancer cast because they're like, she's not as good. She's awkward and gangly. And anytime she's on stage, everybody's looking at her and not the rest of us.
Gag.
Yeah. And I just think it's really funny that they're like, ugly, bad, but also nobody could take their eyes off her.
She's disgusting, she's stupid, and they're obsessed.
And, after that, she lands a job in Cecil Landau's Sauce Tartare and his sequel, Sauce Picante. And she lands a featured role in one of them just because of that very same reason. We're just saying, like, she stole focus. When she was on stage, people just wanted to look at her. It didn't matter how good she was.
Right.
It was just the spotlight was her. A casting director sees her in Sauce Picante and is like, you should really get into acting. And she starts small. She does a BBC television play. She appears in One Wild Oat, Laughter in Paradise, Young Wives' Tale, which is maybe the largest role at this point, and Lavender Hill Mob. And really, it's not until Thorold Dickinson's The Secret People in 52 that she gets like a leading role. She's a secondary lead in this film.
She learns so much from her co-stars, just how to like negotiate with the press, her personal and public life, what they get to know. And she made some really good friendships there and like just literally learned how to act on that film compared to everything else.
The farthest we've gone back on this show was maybe doing Joan Crawford, and we sort of explained the impossible beauty standards of the time period during that era, but I don't think we ever touched on the fact that like actors didn't really have publicists back then. They might have had agents, but they didn't have a person who was like, here's everything we're gonna, here's how you're gonna shoot my client, here's what you're gonna get. And Audrey Hepburn sort of had to do that for herself, and it's something that really carries over into her full career. Audrey Hepburn never let like the paparazzi take photos of her filming. It was always photos she approved by the actual photo department.
Wow.
She would constantly tell cameramen how to light her. And like these are not pushy things. Let me tell you, if your career is how you look.
Yeah.
These are things you have to know. And there's a surprising number of very famous people who do not know this stuff. Cary Grant was very much another type of this person. We're going to get, I know this is jumping far ahead, but when they do Charade, he like, Charade was his third to last film. And he was like, yeah, I learned a lot from working with Audrey Hepburn in the way that like her relationship with the press. So, but way before that, after appearing in the Lavender Hill Mob, she gets a small role in a film being shot both in English and French because she can speak both languages. She's one of the only cast members who plays the same role in both versions. And this is a film called Monte Carlo Baby. It was actually being filmed in Monte Carlo.
Hello? Hello, mademoiselle? Mademoiselle, donnez-moi le 123 au Vésinet, s'il vous plaît.
At the hotel where they're filming it happens to be French novelist Colette. And Colette is in the process of looking for somebody to play her character Gigi in the Broadway production of the play Gigi. And she sees Audrey Hepburn and she's like, that's it. And it's really one of those brilliant, like, she was doing the work, but had this occurrence not occurred,
right?
Who knows what would have happened? She ends up going to Broadway in this lead role. She goes into rehearsals having never spoken any lines on stage, because even in Sauce Picante, she was like a featured dancer, but like these were actual lines.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, she had like one line before and one tiny little off thing, and it's like, oh, she was nervous every single time.
And that's another thing that keeps through her entire career. She is always nervous on stage and in front of the camera, and it never shows. But I do think that's a really interesting thing that she stayed nervous. And the play opens, and critics don't really care for it, but they love her. And that's really the thing that sells her, is it's just like, well,
she's arrived.
A star. Yeah. William Wyler, who we talked about in our Olivia de Havilland episode because he directed The Heiress, is looking for a fresh young face to star in his new movie Roman Holiday, which would be played across from Gregory Peck's Leading Man. And he hears of Audrey Hepburn. He's like, give her a screen test.
William Wyler came to London looking for an unknown. and I was fully qualified. And I was tested among, several hundreds of others, and somehow got that part.
They put her in front of a camera, but he instructs them, leave the camera on after she thinks she's done and interview her.
Stuff.
And it's a very smart thing because she lets down all of her pretenses and she just turns into, I think, the Audrey Hepburn that most people know. She's incredibly charming. She's very disarming. The screen test gets sent to William Wyler and he's like, that's the girl.
Didn't know how long the war was going to last, so I went to a ballet school and learned to dance. And in about 1944, about a year before the end of the war, I was quite capable of performing. And it was a sort of some way in which I could make some contribution, and I did give performances to collect money for the underground, which always needed money.
And what about the Germans? What did they do about it?
Let's know about it.
And so in 1953, she stars, it's her first movie. This is her only audition for a major movie, very much like Eddie Murphy. One audition.
Yeah.
And she's the lead in a major Hollywood picture.
Yeah, so Roman Holiday is like the arrival.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, it's hard to, there are hardly, I can't think of many other like arrivals that are just like, boom, gal, you're a star, and like immediately to the A-list top of everything. What do we think about Roman Holiday, gals?
She's literally playing a princess in her first outing.
Literally, all I was thinking, I was like, I have not seen these movies, but I was like, is this the old school version of the Princess Switch?
It literally is the old school version of that.
Because it's basically like, comedy of like identity and tricks being played. Also, the original How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, journalism awry, and like sneaky sneak.
You've already forgot one of the major ones is the original Chasing Liberty with Mandy Moore.
Yes.
Yes.
Even down to the haircut. Even down to like, she gets a haircut to disguise herself and whatnot. Yeah.
And Gregory Peck is very handsome in this.
He's very handsome, and he has such good chemistry with her. And let me tell you, there's some oldies that they put her up against in her career.
Oh my goodness.
There are.
His chemistry with her is pretty great.
Yeah.
And
I think the scene that like really, the ending when, what I love about this movie is like there's not like really the happy ending or whatever. It's kind of like this wonderful thing happened. She got to like breathe, and she has found a way to be a princess, but still like be who she wants to be and not just fucking placate everyone. And so when they ask her about like what has been your favorite place to visit, and she says, yeah, it's been here in Rome. Fuck everywhere else.
which is also funny because most of the Italians think she's been sick in bed for the entire time. She plays a princess and she's sort of tired of her duties, so she sneaks off one day and she gets drunk.
They roofie her.
Yeah.
She does not get drunk.
She doesn't get drunk.
Her.
You're right.
Because she's like restless and can't go to bed, and they're like, here, take these pills.
Gregory Peck, who's a reporter, finds her and realizes what a great story it would be to record this princess out and about.
A great note is he finds her whenever she's passed out on a bench, and any other film would have made that horrible and creepy. And he is the most respectful gentleman, wants to get her home, but doesn't know where to take her. So he just takes her to his hotel, wherever he's staying, and just lets her sleep, is very respectful.
He also
on the couch, on the bed, takes care of her.
He fully doesn't want to, though. He's fully like, okay, like, go home now. and she's like, I don't get it. But yeah, there's 0% creep factor there, which is, it shouldn't be hard to do, and yet somehow lots of movies just don't know how to do that.
Somehow in the 50s, they nailed it.
They nailed it.
Would you be so kind as to tell me where I am?
Well, this is what is laughingly known as my apartment.
Did you bring me here by force?
No. Quite the contrary.
Have I been here all night alone?
If you don't count me, yes.
So I've spent the night here with you.
Oh, well, now, I don't know that I'd use those words exactly. But, from a certain angle, yes.
And honestly, this isn't a Gregory Peck episode, but I do want to just take a side step to say everybody who ever worked with Gregory Peck said that he was an utmost gentleman, and he was always very responsive to his co-stars, and he was always very cool about advancing their careers or trying to advance their careers. Now, there is a fun sort of apocrypha story where it says that he was like, you know, she's really the star of this movie, and only my name's going above the title. So why don't we try and get her name above the title? That's not how it happened. How it happened was actually William Wyler was like, this is her movie, and Gregory Peck's is the only name above the title, but really it should be both their names. And he calls Gregory Peck's agent, and Gregory Peck's agent is like, well, then you have to ask Gregory because it's in his contract. And then William Wyler does, and Gregory's cool about it. But I like the idea that Gregory's going around, Mr. Peck's going around being like, oh yeah, Audrey Hepburn, I made her. That's
not quite.
Not quite, but he can have the credit. We'll give him this little thing. I love Gregory Peck.
Oh, I do too. He's so good. And
he's so handsome. That role was supposed to be Cary Grant, but Cary Grant felt he was too old for it.
Which is hilarious because then
I know.
Because literally, lol.
We'll like a decade later. I really like Roman Holiday. I think it really holds up. I hadn't seen it in a very long time, and then I rewatched it for this. I think it's cute in all the right ways, but I think it's also heavy in the right spots as well too, which is a hard balancing act, especially for a 50s film. But I think the advantage is that you have a pro like Wyler behind the camera who's really sort of guiding it to making it not, because it could easily go too silly. I'm always, for some reason, my brain is always like, when Eddie Albert shows up, I'm like, oh, he's going to be over the top. But not only is he not over the top, when Eddie Albert showed up, I was like, is Eddie Albert also incredibly handsome? So,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
He is so handsome. Yeah. It just takes me aback as a queer woman. I'm like, okay.
That's what I was like, I always understood Gregory Peck. And then I'm like, wait, Eddie Albert.
Wait, should they kiss? Or
yeah, exactly. Should Hepburn leave them alone?
Right.
No, I completely adore this film. Everything just works for me. I'm such a sucker for it. It's got the bittersweet ending that I love in a film, so it works.
Doesn't she like win a bunch of awards for this?
Just a few.
Just a tiny smattering. Completely unexpected to her, wins the Academy Award for Best Actress. She gets a BAFTA Award for Best British Actress in a Leading Role, and she gets the Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in Motion Picture Drama in 1953. So certainly not hurting. And honestly, if any of you have seen her acceptance speech, it's maybe my favorite thing, because she looks like she's going to have a panic attack. And the first thing barely out over the music she says is,
it's too much.
It's too much. It's just so humble.
It's funny because, like, you know, her career just like the mid 50s just like exploded. Like, she is like, we're automatically into the meat of her career, you know.
There's no ramping up.
No.
It's literally like if you were watching a rocket launch and they were like, on the count of 10, 1.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
She is so busy during this time. Like, she finishes filming Roman Holiday, does a Broadway tour of Gigi, and then just like goes into a next film.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the next film is Billy Wilder's Sabrina, which I think is a little hurt by the fact that it comes immediately after Roman Holiday, because it's essentially another Cinderella story, but told in a much more conventional way, where she's the daughter of a chauffeur of a very wealthy family. She goes away to French cooking school. She comes back and she's, you know,
she's fashioned now.
Yeah, exactly. She's draped in Givenchy. I do want to tell the story of Givenchy, by the way. So she does Roman Holiday. Edith Head does all her costumes. It's her big success. Everybody's like, she's a fashion plate. Huge success, by the way, in Japan. Like, Roman Holiday is a success in America, but it's even bigger in Russia and Japan for some reason. Sparks a whole craze in Japan about dressing and looking like Audrey Hepburn. To this day, there are entire mangas about her character in Roman Holiday.
Whoa.
She's a big hit in Japan. When people say big in Japan, they're talking about Audrey Hepburn.
And actually, it caused a bit of a furor, especially in Japan, where the film was an enormous success, still is today. because there, all girls had very long hair, and it was part of the tradition, and they all cut off their hair. And I was held responsible.
She basically is given a budget and told for this movie to go to France, buy her own sets of costumes, so they can like ship them back with her, and then the studio doesn't have to pay shipping fees, and then the studio will reimburse her. It's this weird little scheme. But she sees this small shop by Givenchy, and she goes in for an appointment, and he's all excited because Katharine Hepburn is there to see him. And he goes
Audrey.
in, and no, well, that's he goes in, and it's not Katharine. It's Audrey, and he's like, "Oh,
who the fuck are you?"
Yeah, great. But she instantly wins him over with her charm and her wit, and they become lifelong collaborators. He says she's the best person to ever wear clothing. You could put anything on her. She knows all of her lines, all of her angles. She just makes everything look so natural. She buys essentially all of her costumes for Sabrina, comes back with them. Edith Head wins the Academy Award for costuming.
Oh yeah, they couldn't credit him.
Nope, they did not credit him.
She got to keep her costumes from Roman Holiday.
She did.
Like, she requested that.
Which is such a I don't know, flex.
Yeah, that's a power move.
But anyways, so she comes back and she's in love with this younger brother played by William Holden. There's an older brother played by Humphrey Bogart who falls in love with her. It's creepy because he's twice her age.
Yes.
He's also a nightmare human being to work with. On the other hand, William Holden and Audrey Hepburn start having an illicit affair.
Love that for them.
Yeah, good for them. And she really thinks this is the one. Like, I got this so early in my life. So she thinks William Holden's the one. You know, he has some issues. He's married. But really the straw that breaks the camel's back is she's like, also, I want to have a ton of kids. I love kids. And he's like, I had a vasectomy. So,
goodbye.
Yeah. And well, that's literally it. She's like,
literally hit the brakes, like, immediately. Boom. No.
She's like, and this is my friend, William Holden.
Yeah.
And you know, the film comes out, it gets her a nomination for Best Actress. It's not as big as Roman Holiday.
I can break your heart a little more. Cary Grant was supposed to play the Humphrey Bogart part, but declined that too.
Oh my God.
Again, he's like, I'm too old. Actually, the rumor is that he didn't want to have to carry an umbrella because there's a scene in which Humphrey Bogart carries an umbrella. But we did an entire Cary Grant episode, and that man did not take himself that seriously.
Right.
Like,
No.
I don't think he'd be like, it's unmanly to hold an umbrella.
No.
In his weird...
He's a silly man, no.
Yeah,
exactly.
In 1954, she decides to play a water nymph on Broadway in the play Undine. She does this with Mel Ferrer.
Gregory Peck set them up because Mel's like came from a very rich family, was like childhood friends with Gregory Peck.
Yes.
And so Gregory Peck pretty much set them up essentially because he's like, I think you guys would get along.
Gregory.
If you want to watch a really bad version of her life story, the Jennifer Love Hewitt TV movie is on YouTube.
Stop.
Oh, it's so
good.
bad.
It's free.
It's absolutely for free. And Mel Ferrer is played by Will from Will and Grace. So
stop.
That does not make any sense.
No, it is maybe the worst casting I've ever seen, which is funny.
Because Mel's at least like generically hot, handsome.
Yeah, and like, but also like a little swarthy. And I don't think Eric McCormick is swarthy. I think he's pale white. They're, a budding relationship, a couple, and they're like, we should work together on this play. They go to do this play. She gets great marks. Mel Ferrer, on the other hand, gets terrible. Like, people are like, he's literally trying to steal scenes. He's pretending to be Jerry Lewis. He's picking up and acting the fool, and nobody likes it. But that doesn't deter the romantic relationship, because on September 25th of that year, 1954, they get married. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of a whirlwind romance. 55, she doesn't do any films. And the only reason I'm bringing that up, which I think is funny, because she ends up receiving a Golden Globe for World Film Favorite of the Year.
It's
year.
like she did nothing and they're like, we love you.
Yeah, we
You're
love
our
you.
favorite.
They're still watching Roman Holiday at this point.
Yeah,
They're like
yeah.
reruns.
The next thing she does is she does War and Peace in 56, which is the King Vidor big Hollywood adaptation of the Tolstoy novel. It's long.
Yeah. So pretty much King Vidor, he was like trying to make this film, but he also had a really controlling producer saying you have to cast like famous people, A-listers, because he wanted like Paul Scofield, like a little bit more traditional actors, Peter Ustinov. That's who he wanted.
I fucking love Peter
like,
Ustinov.
No, we're going to make you hire a Fonda and you got to do Mel Ferrer. Basically, they hired Audrey and they're like, oh, you need to do Mel too.
Right.
And King Vidor just did not like the men that he cast in the lead roles, but he's like, at least Audrey understood what was going on. He was a big fan of Audrey. Nobody else. He was not very into it.
Does it change her career that much? No.
A very cute thing, though, she did present King Vidor his honorary Oscar much later on. So that was
true.
People love her.
She lands the lead role in Funny Face opposite Fred Astaire. That's 57. She gets to show off her dancing abilities. She actually gets to sing on camera, which is something she won't really get to do again. Just one more time.
Gavin, do you believe in like empathicalism, Gavin? I just wanted to ask you really quick.
Clearly, I don't.
No, because you're hateful. Literally watching this movie, I was like, they were just making shit up, huh? The movie's cute. I get, like if you can't think too hard about it, it's cute. Her dancing, that dancing scene is like, didn't they literally use that for a Gap commercial?
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. It's style, honey.
Fred Astaire, great, charming, whatever. I find them really uncomfortable together. I do not see romance for them.
She said she always wanted to dance with him, and that's why she liked it. But also, he is way too old to be her love interest. Kay Thompson is great. I did love her. She is a hoot.
That movie is campy, camp.
It is so silly. I feel like I just made that movie up in my fever dreams.
Where I come from, the man asks the girl to dance.
Oh, you must come from the Stone Age. We think freely here. If a girl wants to dance with a man, she asks him. We're not inhibited by outmoded social conventions.
I can see that. Do you ask men to dance with you?
Isn't it time you realize that dancing is nothing more than a form of expression or release? There's no need to be formal or cute about it.
Speaking of way too old, her next film is Love in the Afternoon, starring alongside Gary Cooper and Maurice Chevalier. And I'm terrible at pronouncing things, so let's say that that's close enough. It's another Billy Wilder film. It's awful. It's truly awful. She plays the daughter of a detective who basically his main job when he's in Paris is to hunt down the women Gary Cooper has been sleeping with. And she falls in love with Gary Cooper, and then he goes away for a year and he comes back, and they... she pretends to be this very sexually experienced person, and then he gets jealous, and then that's essentially what gets them together. It's garbage. It's very like men oriented. On top of that, Gary Cooper is more than twice her age at the time, looks like he's 3 times her age. The reviews of him being old affected him so much that he had a facelift after this movie, and it didn't take, and he looked exactly the same. Yeah.
What happens when your facelift doesn't take? Oh my God.
You just look exactly the same. Like the newspaper reports were like Gary Cooper went to have plastic surgery to look more like Gary Cooper.
Jeez. I'm like Googling to look at him.
I feel like if there was a few more rewrites and if it was like Rock Hudson or Peter Finch, someone just slightly older.
That's really who it had to be, because she goes on
someone hot and old, slightly older, not 1,000 years older. It would have been a good movie. There are like, and there's it's such a missed opportunity. Like Billy Wilder, come on, man.
I love the like quartet of musicians that follow him around. I think there's some brilliant touches in the film. And I will say, for anybody who thinks Audrey Hepburn is not an actor, that she's just a pretty face, watch the scene where she recognizes him at the opera and he doesn't recognize her. And the pain in her fucking face of being like, I look amazing, and this man, this fucking asshole, doesn't recognize me. It's heartbreaking in a comedy. I was like, oh, like my heart broke for her.
No, she is so good in this film that.
Yeah, but it's just this old man pawing at this young girl. It doesn't help that she also looks 14. Like she's like eternally 14.
She's so young in this. She's only like 28 when it comes out.
Yeah.
Something like that.
The next 3 films are kind of not fully remembered of her. They round out the end of her 50s period. I'd say that there's one that's pretty good in there and the other 2 are big flops, but she does The Nun story next in 59. It's basically a sort of nurse's struggle with her faith because she wants to go to the Congo and help people out as a missionary nun / nurse. Her father was a surgeon, and she goes there and she just can't keep up with the like rigors of you have to stop and pray every hour when the bells toll. Also the fact that they were completely neutral when the Nazis roll in, because they're like, well, that has nothing to do with us. And she essentially gives up her religious calling in the end. I think this is, I am very against missionary work, I just want to say, but I think this is a very beautiful film, and I think she really put her heart and soul into playing this nun. Sister Luke is her name. I think it's one of her finest screen performances, but it is not an easy film.
I think primarily she was what we know as a perfectionist in everything she did. And although she was a perfect nurse, she herself never thought she was perfect enough as a nun.
I see.
And therefore was, I suppose you could say, honest enough to acknowledge it. And anyway, she couldn't go on living that way. In a way, you can call that an imperfection, because one has to know that there's no such thing as perfection. You have to live with your own faults.
These 3 movies that around this time, it seems like she very much was trying to get away from the style and maybe fill her CV with some more substance. I watched The Nun Story, I watched The Unforgiven, I tried to watch Green Mansions. That's what I'll give to Green Mansions.
She literally finishes The Nun Story, flies to LA, starts shooting Green Mansions with her husband directing.
Yep.
It's super racist, and then she does The Unforgiven, and that's super racist.
It's so crazy cakes. In The Unforgiven, when she realizes that she's a Native American, and she looks in the mirror and then wipes some fucking paint on her forehead, and I was like, what kind of hot topic people had emotions back then, right? People knew how people acted, right? And
John Huston said that was his least favorite film that he made. And it was during that time she was rehearsing on a horse. She got kicked off the horse. She broke her back, broke several vertebrae, and then she had a miscarriage.
Yeah. And they say that the most likely would not have had the miscarriage had she not been thrown from the horse. And she fucking went and completed the film.
She completed the film.
Yeah.
One cool thing about The Nun Story, she really bonded with the author of the source material and the real life person it was based on. Her name's Mary Louise Habits. And after she broke her back during The Unforgiven, Habits actually nursed her back to health after that. So that was she's making friends everywhere she goes.
And like you said, they're lifelong friends. But I do want to say, by the way, because history has a tendency to be the woman that wrote the book and Mary Louise Habits then lived together for 40 years. But they were probably just friends. No one will ever know.
What?
Gal pals.
It's just
wait a second. So we're saying that this ex real life nun and this little curandera woman were actually kissing?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the world will never know because they are 2 consenting adults living together, but we can't make assumptions.
That's so fucking punk rock, though. This woman who was trying to be a nun, gave it up just because of the inner turmoil, and then she found out that she's actually this badass lesbian, and is
supposedly
allegedly living with
I fucking hate that.
Right.
It's okay. Nobody knows who owns the rights to the estate. That's why you can't find the book anywhere, really. Right. It's out of print. So don't worry.
No one's coming for us.
Who can sue you?
Right.
No one's coming.
She does these 3 movies to kind of push herself away from, you know, what she's known for. And then like literally right after that, it's like right back to what probably is like the most iconic thing she's known for, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 1961 comes around. She gets cast in Blake Edwards' adaptation of Breakfast at Tiffany's based on the Truman Capote novella. Truman Capote's like, I don't think she's right for the role.
No one would have been right for Truman. Truman would have been...
Truman
He literally wrote it for Marilyn Monroe.
He was like, where is Marilyn?
Hepburn.
Wow.
Also, I've read that little novella. It's not very good. I own a copy. It's not good.
Go off. Pop
I was
off.
a curious teenager. No, it was bad.
I think everybody sort of knows what Breakfast at Tiffany's is about, but just in case you don't, she's supposedly a call girl. The movie is very unclear on that point, but she spends her nights with men. She then in the morning gets a little brekkie from a pharmacy and goes and stares out the windows of Tiffanys, living a richer life. She meets a writer who just really wants to save her from her life, and but
he's also a kept man.
Yeah, he is a kept man. And yeah, it's
racist.
Super racist. Oh my God. I mean, it's amazing that this movie is such in the zeitgeist, but I will say that it mostly is because of her, because of the Givenchy outfit she wears, and but like the Mickey Rooney, like
the thing to me is like that character, like, why does he even have to be Asian? There's literally nothing about the character that like
the character doesn't even.
You could cut him out and it would not change the film.
Yes.
And like, I was gonna say, he doesn't even not have to be Asian. He doesn't have to exist. Like you can get through that movie without him at all. Yeah, it's
talk about something that has just sailed on charm and cool and being pretty.
Yeah, totally.
OJ's a great agent. He knows a terrific lot of phone numbers. What's Jerry Wall's phone number, OJ?
Oh, come on, lay off.
Darling, I want you to call him and tell him what a genius Fred is.
Yes, I got it.
Stop blushing, Fred. You didn't say you were a genius. I did. So quit stalling, OJ. Just tell me what you're going to do to make Fred rich and famous.
Now, why don't you let Fred, baby, and me settle that matter, huh, puppy?
Okay, but just remember, I'm the agent. She's already got a decorator. I'm the agent.
I will say the other thing that comes from that movie that I really like is Henry Mancini's Moon River. He purposefully writes it in one key because she's not a strong singer and he wants her to be able to sing it. And the myth is they go to early screening of the movie, and the execs, as soon as it ends, are like, well, you got to cut that fucking song. And she stands up and she's like, over my dead body. So...
Which I would believe, because she was very, like, forceful with people during that time. She, like, knew what she wanted, and she knew when something was good, and people tended to listen to her.
And honestly...
she was the biggest fucking star in the world,
absolutely.
Right? Like,
it earned its Oscar.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
She also gets nominated for Best Performance. She does not win. In the same year, William Wyler's like, I made this movie 30 years ago, wasn't allowed to make it about lesbians back then. I want to remake it. Would you be interested in being one of my lesbian gal pals? And she's like, yes, absolutely. So she makes The Children's Hour with William Wyler. It is a much better film than these three, which is the original. But I actually don't think these three is that bad. I've seen them both. She stars opposite Shirley MacLaine, and essentially it's this film about these two teachers who a child begins telling lies about them having a sexual relationship with each other, and it ruins their entire life. I love this film.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so good. Little Mary is such a devilish child, like electric chair.
Yes, straight flat. Lillian Hellman wrote the play that's based on.
Yeah, she also wrote the original These Three, the straight version of it for the film.
Right, and so I took an American Women in Literature course, and we watched this movie, and I was like fully shook about like how aggressive this play is, and how aggressive this little fucking tiny monster is, and just fully enters the canon of little white girls that are devil women who lie and lie. And but also this movie was so controversial. You couldn't say, like, in the movie they stretch it out for such a long time about like what is the lie, and then finally they're like, we're lovers. They think we're lovers.
literally a child whispering in like her grandma's ear or whatever.
Yeah.
About what's going
and
on.
the funny thing is Shirley MacLaine tried to like drop hints into her performance.
He had to cut it because he was worried about like all the censors and audience reception and stuff.
She was just, there were more scenes of her like longing and whatnot. And but the funny thing is she sort of repraised that performance years ago, I think in the Celluloid Closet, and she said she wishes they'd been more forceful about the issue, and she like can't believe the outcome of her character, which I won't spoil for you here because I think it's really worth. But I, in a way, disagree with her because I think it exactly reflects the mores of the time. I think it fully is like, this is how people reacted to this sort of thing in this period, and it was gross and terrible, but it's realistic.
Stop talking about it, Martha. Let's pack and get out of here. Let's take the train tomorrow. The train to where? I don't know. There must be some place we can go. I don't know where it is. They know about us. We've been famous. But this isn't a news, and they say we've done. Other people haven't been destroyed by it. They're the people who believe in it, who want it, who've chosen it for themselves. We aren't like that.
Next big film, 63's Charade. We brought up in a Cary Grant episode. It's essentially Audrey Hepburn doing her Hitchcock film. She was planning on working with Hitchcock at one point. He sent her a script. It involved a woman getting strangled. She was like, no, ma'am. And, and so that's sort of...
Just not for me.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, it's a no for me, dog.
Charade is so good.
My other favorite anecdote about Charade, by the way, is, Cary Grant had never worked with her. They meet. The first thing she does is spill wine on his tan suit, and he laughs it off. And Stanley Donen thinks it's so funny he puts it into the movie. And so she really realizes that she has sort of a kindred spirit with Cary Grant in terms of the way that they handle themselves. And this is, like I said, she teaches him sort of a smarter way to deal with the press and a way to pull back. And he pulls her aside at one point on it, and he just says, you should learn to like yourself a bit more. And I think, I think that's an important moment for her, because we haven't delved into the psychology of somebody who suffers that much as a child, but she doesn't like herself. She doesn't understand why everybody says she's pretty. She thinks she's too tall. She thinks she's flat chested, that she has ribs that stick out. She thinks she has big feet.
And she's been told all these things by her mother, just growing up from the time she was like single digits. Like her mother is tearing into her about her looks.
I sort of accepted myself the way I am. But of course I wanted to have more shape, and I didn't want to be as tall as I was, especially as I wanted to be a dancer. And as I have rather large feet, once I was up on toe, you can imagine I was a very tall dancer. I'd like to have had smaller feet. I hate having big feet. And my friends have pretty feet and wear such pretty shoes. I remember years ago, my mother said I looked like olive oil. Popeye's girlfriend. Thin legs and big feet.
Am I correct to also say that I read that she suffered a lot of miscarriages?
Yes.
Several miscarriages, at least 5 or 6.
Yeah, jeez. And famously, she, that's all she wanted. Like she
literally just wanted a loving family.
Yeah. But what I've always had, and maybe that I was born with, was an enormous love of people, children. The one thing I dreamed of in my life was to have children of my own. It always boils down to the same thing of not only receiving love, but wanting desperately to give it, and almost need to give it. It is true that I had an extraordinary mother. She herself was not a very affectionate person in the sense that I today consider affection. I spent a lot of time looking for it, and I found it. A lot of love within her, not always able to show it.
Her second film in 1964 is My Fair Lady. This is a role she fought for, she wanted. Julie Andrews originally did it on Broadway, but the studio, Jack Warner, was like, no, we need somebody who's bankable for the international audiences. Hepburn was it. She was really excited. She spent hours learning to dance. She spent days with a vocal coach, really thinking that she was going to get to sing it. Both George Cukor and Jack Warner lied to her, told her that she was going to be the one singing. She records all the songs, and secretly behind her back, they've invited Marni Noxon, who is an operatic Broadway singer. She also did Maria's voice in West Side Story. They bring her in to dub all the songs. Now, you can actually hear some of Audrey's voice. I think it's Just You Wait, Henry Higgins is the big song that's just hers. But other than that, they really kept her voice out. And that was devastating to her.
My Fair Lady famously is a very hard musical. Everyone in LA and New York was like, well, you know that Julie Andrews deserved this part, la 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 la. And so that was this kind of like extra sauce.
And she initially turned it down because Audrey has like said in an interview she too wanted Julie Andrews in the role, and when Jack Warner's like, we're not going to hire her, and then they were going to make an offer to another actress, she's like, well, I might as well do it then,
right? Because
she wanted to at least try to do it justice. And then she later regretted taking the role because they wouldn't use her tracks.
And the legacy of it is everybody except her gets nominated. You know, there's a Best Supporting Actor nomination, Best Actor for Rex Harrison, and on top of that, at the 37th Academy Awards, Julie Andrews is nominated for Best Actress for Mary Poppins. She wins, and famously, the first thing she says in her speech is, I'd like to thank Jack Warner.
Gag. That's a gag. And then on top of that, didn't Audrey Hepburn give out the statue for Best Actor to Rex Harrison?
Yep.
And it's kind of like, God, she's got to like...
And he had to thank both of the Eliza Doolittles in the room.
Yeah. Roof.
Yeah.
I will say, overall, My Fair Lady is not my favorite movie, I would say.
Henry Higgins is an unwell man.
Oh, he's sick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All I could think of was like, were people just like rich and bored back in the day?
Yes.
And they were like, oh, you're different. Let's figure out why. Can we also really quickly talk about how do you guys feel about Audrey's accent work in this movie?
It's very theatrical.
They'll take away my character and drive me on the streets for speaking to gentlemen.
There. Who's hurting you, you silly girl? What you take me for?
I'm a Bible elf. I never spoke a word.
Shut up. Do I look like a policeman?
Then what you take down me words for? How do I know you took me down right? You just show me what you wrote about me.
The next film she does is How to Steal a Million. She's cast opposite Peter O'Toole. It's the first time that she's cast off a man who is like age appropriate. Which I just think it's funny that you're almost 15 years into her career and finally they're just like, here's a guy who might be close to your age. It's campy, stylish.
Peter O'Toole's hot.
Yes, he's very he's pretty great in it. 67, she reteams again with Stanley Donen for Two for the Road, which is a fractured nonlinear story about a couple's relationship, sort of the demise of their relationship. I love this film, and I think it's very much a sign of what's coming in the new Hollywood, which is also the thing that sort of pushes her out of acting, but we'll get there in just a moment.
All I can think was like, someone was really, really sad and broken when they wrote this. I thought I was like, is there a couple that hates each other more than this main couple? And then I was like, oh, there is. It's that other fucking second couple who think they have a nice relationship, but they don't.
Another demon child.
Another demon child. I didn't like Two for the Road, honestly.
Oh, wow. Really? I fucking love Two for the Road, so...
Oh, I love it.
It was too painful for me. I was like, this is sad. They're sad and sad.
The thing is that
I do love that Albert Finney is like 7 years younger than her, and they're very hot.
Well, they're so hot, by the way. And she writes in her personal notes like, oh, he's like a nice like guy to work with. He's always asking questions and everything. And truly what she's saying in these notes is, I'm fucking him, because she has an affair with Albert Finney while she's still married to Mel Ferrer. But at this point, we should mention she's had a child with Mel Ferrer, Sean Hepburn Ferrer, and their relationship has basically dissolved.
He was very controlling of her career, basically a manager in a sense, and was like really trying to get himself ahead on her coattails.
Absolutely. And so a year later, they end up divorcing anyways. But before we get to 1968, she does one last film in 1967, which is Wait Until Dark. It is directed by Terrence Young. Terrence Young, who was an injured British soldier in one of the hospitals that she also worked at during World War II. She would assist at hospitals. And
that's wild.
Yeah, this man ends up being a director for her twice in her career. Wait Until Dark. It's a stylish suspense thriller. It's a little mod. It's based off a stage play. She plays a blind woman who is terrorized by these three criminals who are searching for a heroin doll, which is heroin hidden in a doll. And it's dark. It's suspenseful. It's fun. I think she's really great in it. After 67, she decides, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to start raising my child. I'm going to, stay off the big screen. And also, as I mentioned before, New Hollywood is coming in. She sees something like The Graduate and realizes she would be cast as the Mrs. Robinson role. She doesn't want that. That's not good for her brand. That's not good for who she is and who she sees herself. So she's like, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to quit acting. She also gets remarried in 1969 and has a second son. This is Andrea Dotti, is this Italian psychiatrist that she gets married to. She has a second son with him, Luca Andrea Dotti, who was born in 1970. That relationship is a little... Let's just say he's having a lot of affairs. He
was photographed with around 200 other women during the time of his marriage.
He has affairs at their house. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not cool. It's not great. And
was she just do you think this is kind of her wanting to just really be a mom time and really...
She says that, yeah. She's like, acting really wasn't my passion. It stopped being fun for me. And she was really sad that she had to miss so much of Sean's life growing up. And she was kind of just over it. Her marriage was falling apart, the first one. She was just like, I kind of just want to be a mom right now. It's all I've ever really wanted to do.
Wow. Do you think do you think she knew about the affairs with this Dotti guy and just kind of was ignoring it to kind of play house?
Yeah, and I genuinely do. And I think there's evidence to suggest that she wanted a normal, or quote unquote normal functioning relationship. And she was willing to overlook a lot of things in order to spare her children the sort of pain.
Yeah, she really wanted to make it work for her sons, even though it was in newspapers that he was being photographed with these women.
Oh my God.
She really tried to make it work.
I should mention, by the way, in the 60s, she is able to find her father through the Red Cross, and she meets with him. They do not reconcile. He's a total dick and basically tells her, I had no business being a father. And then she continues to financially support him for the rest of his life.
Wow.
And also during this, her entire career, her mom was just stage mom the entire time, really hated all of her husbands and everything, and financially supported her the whole time as well.
So
even though she was really cruel.
She's paying for her two parents who basically at every turn are we don't have the capacity to love you.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah, super dark.
But she's a people pleaser.
She truly is. She decides a script comes along in 1976. It's called Robin and Marian. It's a period piece. It's a Robin Hood film, and it's about the end of Robin Hood's life. Sean Connery plays Robin Hood. She's a year older than Sean Connery, so it's very age-appropriate casting. And it's her first film in 9 years. So it was a big to-do that she was returning to the screen. But the movie's not that big of a hit. It gets some good notes from the press, but it doesn't, it's not a big earner for anybody.
Nah, she took the role because her son wanted her to, because James Bond was in it, but she didn't like making the film, the style of it. So
yeah. Oh yeah, she found it very unglamorous. I ended up liking the film, and I doubt we'll probably mention, because I feel like it's kind of a middling entry into her career, so I doubt we'll mention again, but I really like her performance in it, and I like her chemistry with Connery, even though he does hit her in one of the first scenes that he's in, and I was like, no man.
That was my Letterboxd review. Sean Connery really does like slapping women.
Yeah, I was like, was this necessary, guys?
He does say sorry,
but she gets him in the end.
Yes,
but
She gets them both.
Yeah, she does. The next film she does is Bloodline in 1979. She admits around this period she'd gone into a deep depression. There was the affairs that her husband was having. Their relationship was ending. She did not even read the script, really. Terrence Young offered it to her. They had worked together before on Wait Until Dark. So in 79, she does Bloodline. It's a thriller. It's garbage. It's awful. There's a subplot where there's like a snuff film killer. And it's like, had Audrey Hepburn read this script, she would not have appeared in this movie. The only thing that comes about it is she meets Ben Gazzara. They start having an affair. And Ben Gazzara is one of the only guys that like breaks it off with her and is basically like, I don't love you. I'm going through a painful divorce. There's somebody else I'm interested in. He's the one person who, like, in the history of the world is like, I do not love Audrey Hepburn.
Imagine the power.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't. Yeah. In 81, she does Peter Bogdanovich film, They All Laughed, which is loosely based on the stories Ben Gazzara has been telling him about his affair with Audrey Hepburn. But he cast Ben Gazzara and she's like really excited to see Ben Gazzara again because she's like, maybe he does love me this time. He does not.
No.
It's not a great movie.
This is the movie.
Yeah. It's not a great movie. It's funny. There's a lot of like male film critics who really love it, and it's like Quentin Tarantino and Wes Anderson's like they love it, and I'm just like, yeah, this is like one of those guy movies I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Like
it's red flags when they love the movie.
Yeah, she doesn't come back in to do another film role until the 1987 TV movie Love Among Thieves with Robert Wagner. It's a movie that really thinks it's charade. It's not. And then her final film role is a cameo in the Steven Spielberg 1989 film Always. She plays every time I read this, they're like, she plays an angel named Hap. I would argue she's maybe God. She's perhaps God in this movie. That's certainly a thing that I watched.
If this was a Steven Spielberg mixed reviews, this would be my 1-star review.
Yeah.
I feel like they just saw Audrey Hepburn wandering around the woods and just put a camera on her. She's fine. I call it the $1 million cameo because she donated all that to UNICEF.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Good. Love that.
82, she finally kicks Andrea Dotti to the curb, and it's dissolved in 82. And then she starts a relationship with this actor named Robert Walders. He's Dutch. They like love the fact that they can speak Dutch to each other. So cute. He is the widower of actress Merle Oberon. She stays with him until she passes away, and she says that those were the best. It was the best relationship of her life, and they never married, though they considered themselves married in the almost decade that they spent together. And I guess the other big thing that we should talk about is her humanitarian work. She basically gets involved with UNICEF in the 50s, but she spends a vast majority of the last part of her life, starting in 1988, working with UNICEF to feed children in nations that are war-torn or impoverished. It basically becomes her big calling post-acting. She throws herself into it like it's a job. They can't, like, UNICEF is not an organization that they can, like, pay for things necessarily. Like, they can pay for her to fly places. That's it. And so she ends up putting up a lot of the money herself. She ends up asking people if she can tour these places, meet these children. To a lot of these children, she's not a celebrity. She's not a movie star. She's a woman who is there to help in any way that she can. She becomes a big advocate. She does TV, she does weeks on end of television. She does something like 15 interviews a day. A lot of them, she won't even allow them to talk about her career. She only will talk about UNICEF. But she's really leveraging her fame, the fact that she is the Audrey Hepburn, to give money and charity to these children.
Right. It's funny because I think about, like, is there an example before Audrey Hepburn doing this type of thing? I think in the late 80s and 90s, it became kind of en vogue, but I think of like Princess Diana, who was kind of similarly known for the same thing. They're nobody but famous. They are just celebrities who are shining a light on this. And I think obviously in the days since, I think most, I would say at least millennial kids growing up saw the the commercials for like giving money to Africa, that just didn't exist,
right.
I think, before Audrey Hepburn.
No, she really weaponized her celebrity to drag cameras to like Somalia and everywhere to highlight these children that were suffering, and she always brought up like her own past in the war to like compare it to, and she was like genuinely heartbroken every time she went somewhere.
It's funny because she sort of takes over this role from Danny Kaye, who was doing a lot. And I don't want to take away from Danny Kaye, but Danny Kaye was essentially doing everything that he could up to an extent, because really UNICEF wanted these celebrities to be sort of just like a face of something, and they didn't require that much of them. Danny Kaye did go above and beyond, but she really took it to the next level. She really was like, no, this is, we're going to play it this way because I can get an audience with these world leaders in a way that, X, Y, and Z from UNICEF can't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now I'm thinking like, it always comes back to Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda was doing something similar with the war efforts, but this type of humanitarian work, I think the only modern day person I can kind of think of would be like Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
With like her work. I mean, I think certainly now there's like, I don't know, Hayden Panettiere wants to save dolphins or some shit. And like stuff like that. But like
everybody has a cause just to like help with their brand. But she was like only taking on these handful of movie roles to donate her salary.
Yes.
People were like, even off camera, she would immediately go and hug these children and stuff. And everyone's like, oh, it smells awful. There's disease. There's everything. And she did not hesitate.
Yeah.
She was in it.
Right. And I think, thinking about, she was one of those starving kids. She was, living in a country that had been forgotten and left for dead. And I can only imagine, I saw like this little biography thing on YouTube about her. And just like that part really got to me, like, man, this woman who had everything in the world, had everything, but truly came from, even... I think a lot about, when people think, oh, Audrey Hepburn, she's just beautiful and had, everything kind of handed to her or whatever. But knowing that her life began, even though her family was well-to-do, it was all wiped out. And the suffering that she went through, I can't even, it's a different thing.
She was literally a depressed 4-year-old just being left with her grandparents every time, just wanting affection.
Yeah.
So she really took it personally that it was like in the 80s that people, like children, were not being fed. Like she took that personally.
Yeah. And I don't know that we get that too often anymore from celebrities, even though like I know that there are some celebrities who do certain things like that, but like to the caliber of a star like Audrey Hepburn, it seems so rare. And this is not like a new story, but like people have definitely said this. She was remembered for being pretty.
Yeah.
And how fucked up is that? Because she did so much, to really even change the culture of being empathetic to other people around the world, and that's not to diminish her work, as, she was a beautiful actress, but she fully was a humanitarian. And to give a fucking Steven Spielberg movie and to give the entire salary with no, like, this was not like a Mark Wahlberg situation where people are calling you out to like do the right thing. She just intrinsically knew how to do the right thing, and that's just like
literally doing the work to give it to UNICEF.
Yeah, she doesn't have to fucking act anymore. But she was like, yeah, I guess I'll fucking do that stupid HAP movie, and because I want to pay for more meals to kids in Africa or whatever.
Children must be the priority. We have to stop thinking that first it's the economy or the armament or whatever. First it has to be a child, because a child is the most fragile and the most vulnerable.
In 1992, she begins suffering abdominal pain, and essentially they find out that she has cancer in her small intestine, and it's metastasized. She has chemotherapy. She has surgery. She's going to try and recover from her surgery. Givenchy gets a private jet to fly her to Switzerland for her final Christmas. Her sons and her partner are told she's going to die. They refuse to tell her, but she knows. She spends that Christmas giving away her stuff to everybody. essentially, you know, she's put into hospice and then she's confined to bed rest. And she passes away, and she passes away with her family around her. She passes away with her ex-husbands there. All of them come. And I don't know, it's really sweet and sad. And if people are like concerned about, you mentioned way back at the beginning of her career, you know, she got to keep her costumes. When she died, of the like quote unquote memorabilia that she had kept, that people had found that she hadn't like given away or sold for money for charity, were her Oscars and a couple scripts.
Wow.
So
everything else, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a person who has lived through war-torn, you know, a childhood and knows about like what's important, knows that things come and they go. And yeah, I just think she's so fucking cool. Like I you know, she was a beautiful human being, beautiful dancer, actress, but like
an EGOT
also,
winner, technically.
She is an EGOT winner.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of familiarity with her work, and her when they fucking told me that she lived through this horrifying, you know, starvation period, I was like, holy shit, like there's so much that a lot of people just don't know about her. And yeah, I'm glad Chelsea, you brought her to us, because I feel rewarded now, because it's not just about like, I think again, it's easy to be like, oh, they just gave her all this like love and adoration because she was beautiful, and she was, but there's so much more.
I think we've talked at length about Audrey Hepburn, both the person and the icon. Let's talk about Audrey Hepburn, the movie star, and move into our 1-star reviews.
So Chels, you as our guest get to go first. What do you got for us? What is your 1-star review?
Oh my goodness. I was very tempted to say all the stuff she did with Mel Ferrer, but I have to say the most painful thing I sat through was The Unforgiven. I absolutely hated this film. She all but disowned it afterwards. It is so incredibly racist and hard to watch. I just could not believe what I was watching in that moment. It's not even very well made.
No, it's really not.
It's just, it looks like trash. It is trash. I just can't with that film.
It's funny, like, because it was in this moment when we were talking that I remembered that, one, yeah, it's a fucking bonkers and bad movie, but two, she's not good in it.
No.
Like, that moment where she's like, it's very much just like an old school version of, I don't know, like 23andMe the movie, and like,
yeah,
she's like, wait.
She very clearly did not want to be on set. She wanted to be anywhere else. The performance is lacking. It's also super creepy because she's like this child that's adopted in, but also Burt Lancaster, the lead of the film, is old enough to remember when she wasn't the sister and like has a thing for her, and they end up hooking up by the end.
Yeah.
Like, I watched this film so other people don't have to. Like, don't watch it. I wanted to say Mayerling, which was a TV thing she did with her really husband. Bad. I wanted to like pick out all the passion projects she did with Mel Ferrer, but no, The Unforgiven takes the cake. It's garbage. Don't watch it. I try not to tell people not to watch things, but it's not good.
I do want to do a quick overview of the plot. Essentially, the movie is about Audrey Hepburn plays a young girl who you find out is an indigenous Native American, and she was basically stolen as a child by these white people, and now her tribe wants her back, and for some reason you're supposed to side with the white people. On top of that, not only is Audrey Hepburn, because she's like a prairie girl or raised prairie girl, should she not have her accent, but she does. she's like British in the
I feel like she's trying to have a little bit of a Texan accent. There are some moments where I'm like,
kind of.
She's trying.
If you squint, it's like the Benedict Cumberbatch trying to do the American Southern accent. It's bad.
Why then, am I so different from the other neighbor women?
They stick to their wagons where they belong.
Maybe they're just not interested in finding a husband.
Get on your horse and go home to Mama.
But also on top of that, like, half the time she's in red face and half the time she's not. And I know they had to do a break in filming because she had broken her back, but like her skin color is so inconsistent to the movie, and it's just like, what the fuck is happening?
It's only dark when like the lines are like, well, you might be Native American. And then it's like shot of Audrey like in red face. Like every other moment before that, she's just like living her pale fantasy. And like the back end where she's like, she walks out in full like Native American regalia and like the fucking paint on her face. She's like, "'Tis me, Native American Audrey Hepburn." And it's like, what the fuck?
And this is the woman who turned down a role in Sayonara because she's like, you would not believe me in an Asian role.
Yes.
And like, I feel like she did not read the script. I wonder if her husband signed her up for this. It's bad. It's so
That's
awful.
A very good pick, Chels. Very good.
Absolutely. Louis?
You know, I am just going to be that girl and have to say that I fucking hate Breakfast at Tiffany's.
I don't blame you.
That's fair.
Of all of the movies where it is style over substance, I think this takes the cake. I think, you know, they're trying to be, it's like very like mod and funny, and like the whole moment where they're like gonna steal for fun and like they're wearing the masks. There's nothing about this movie that like, the only charming part of this movie is her singing Moon River. Everything else, and maybe at the time it would have been charming, but like, fuck that. No, even then, it's like, if you're a white person, great. But literally they're like, want to do like bad things because we're like interesting people. It's like, no, you can't go into fucking Tiffanys with $10 and like ask the dude to give you something. Like, if you were not as hot as they were, and as straight as they were, and as white as they were, they would have getting kicked the fuck out. Like, and also the movie just does not commit. Chels, maybe you know better since you read the novella, but like, is she fucking for money? Yes or no? Like,
yes,
but in the story.
Yes, that's a little bit more clear in the novella, but also this film, because they had to change it so much to make it like appropriate, it's just boring.
Nothing happens. Like, literally nothing happens.
Man is like watching paint dry. It's on top of being racist.
Right. The racist part is also in that, yes. But the movie takes like the wildest turn when like turns out her name's not Holly Golightly. Like, no fucking shit. She's like has this husband and like life. And she's like, no, but I don't want that. I guess this is a story about a young woman who wants more.
To a Beverly Hillbilly.
Right. Who wants something more out of life and has conned her way to get it, I guess. And this other hot guy who is being paid for by, I don't know, some sad woman. It's just, all I can think of is this is straight white nonsense. And it is way more, like, the poster has more charm than this movie does, okay? Like, it's a no for me, dog.
Yeah. I agree with everything you just said, because it just rings so hollow. Everything about it. It's like too stylized for any sort of like empathy that it's supposed to convey. It's too obscure when it should be specific about certain things, and you're every right to ask, is Holly Golightly a sex worker? Because the way the film presents it, it's almost like no, or like,
the film it doesn't want to go the whole way. Like, and you're right, like the whole idea of, if I'm going to empathize with this woman who has escaped this life that she does not want, like, it does not look like a woman who is struggling to me. You know, it does not look like she, like, when she has to, like, I'm more empathetic to, like, her husband who literally has found her and she tells him to fuck off. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, why? Like, why are you
and the film's told through the eyes of the dude, so you're just, like, gazing and being creepy towards her, and I just can't with it. That's why I never understood it until I watched every other Audrey Hepburn film. I'm like, oh, okay.
I don't want to put you in a cage. I want to love you.
It's the same thing.
No, it's not. Holly?
I'm not Holly. I'm not Lula May either. I don't know who I am. I'm like Cat here. We're a couple of no-name slobs. We belong to nobody, and nobody belongs to us. We don't even belong to each other.
Gavin, what was your one-star review?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Mel Ferrer Green Mansions, Chels, because that's my one-star review.
I had a feeling. Yeah. I just had a feeling somebody was going to say it, because Mel Ferrer, he just needs to be stopped.
Yeah, he's so bad. Anthony Perkins is the lead in this movie. He plays I guess
our favorite little gay boy.
Yeah, our favorite little gay boy. He plays a Venezuelan, I guess.
Right. When he's like, I was born in Caracas, and I was like, where you, gal?
It's something.
And, you know, he basically finds his way into the jungle. He runs afoul of some natives. He gets taken in by a man who has a mysterious daughter named Rima, who is Audrey Hepburn's character. And she's a mysterious jungle girl, as you can guess. Super racist.
Yes.
I actually don't even want to go further with the plot. The plot's really stupid.
Is there a plot?
Yeah.
Is it just random murder?
Just random murder. There's natives. They're killing people because that's what people thought natives did at that time period. But apparently this is based off of some great romance novel from the turn of the century. I can't imagine. And essentially Rima, in the end, I'm going to spoil this all for you because it's insane. Rima gets burned alive at the end, but it's okay because she's like a spirit with the forest, so she grows back elsewhere.
Right. It's Fantasia 2000.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's called the Hatta flower. It blooms for the space of a moon and then disappears. Yet it never dies. If you look in this place tomorrow and it is gone, you must not be sad. Because you know it still exists not very far away.
This movie, to me, I was like, why is she in this B movie? What is going on?
Literally doing favors for her husband, who's just trying and grifting and just trying to be something and just keeps failing.
And
hard.
You know, the only legacy that this movie has is that the comic is eventually adapted by DC Comics, and Rima becomes a DC Comics character who ends up appearing in Super Friends as Rima, the Jungle Girl. So
what?
Yeah. So have it as you will.
That's a choice.
Yeah. Was there anything else that you guys saw that you didn't particularly like besides Two for the Road, Louis, which you are not allowed to say bad things about?
The Unforgiven was the only other one that I thought like. I not the only other one, but like that was. I'm glad you brought that one up because hey.
I'm going to shout out what was almost a real 1-star review, Mayerling, which was another one of Mel's passion projects. It was like a movie of the week that they did live. And then I just have to say, I fell asleep watching Love Among Thieves.
Yeah,
I fell right asleep. I have watched every single Audrey Hepburn film, television, whatever. Oh my goodness. It's the only one I fell asleep during. Robert Wagner should not be allowed to do things. We know what he did to Natalie Wood.
We do know what he did to Natalie Wood. Bloodline's real fucking terrible. It's just genuinely, and like
she literally helping a friend there.
Yeah, and like it's frustrating because Bloodline would make like a great like 70s like Umberto Lenzi giallo, but instead it's this big budget like James Bondy-esque movie with Audrey Hepburn and James Mason and Michelle Phillips and Omar Sharif, and it's just like, no, why are any of you in this movie? Like, you should be dubbed Italians. But yeah, it's so bad. But we've said enough negative. Let's stick to the positive. Let's move into our 5-star reviews.
I'm about to really disappoint you because I think the one film that gets all of her superpowers, her charm, her drama, everything, and it just works is Two for the Road. I adore this film. The first time I saw it, I was just not ready for how much I would enjoy it. And like, I feel like every independent romantic drama owes so much to this. Stanley Donen, he is doing what the other girls wanted to do.
Wow.
More respect to his name. He's just having so much silly fun making this film. And apparently this is like the happiest he ever saw Audrey making a film, and they've been working together forever.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that.
And her and Albert Finney, I'm like, oh my goodness, I finally understand. He is so hot in this. So many shorts.
A lot of short shorts. Yeah, I'll give you that.
So yeah, I enjoyed the heck out of this movie. When she yells at the child, I was like, yes, get her.
and that's really, I mean, it's very, more than any of the other films, it's such an easy movie to tell the plot line to. Is it's the story of the beginning and end of this relationship, but it's told in fragmented parts. Some scenes you're seeing from the end of the relationship, some scenes you're seeing, fuck you, 500 Days of Summer. This is
this is like 4 different timelines, and it's so consistent. I think it's so well edited.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun. If people remember so many of her other beautiful romantic comedies, and I feel like this one just needs a little bit more justice, so maybe Louis can rewatch it with a classy line.
But I understand what Louis is saying by saying like it's too painful, because it is occasionally
that is true.
If you've ever been in a relationship that's like that is ending, it really hits, and
it's very prickly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I love it, because it's not just all the sunshine and rainbows of the beginning. It shows you the hard parts of relationships, and all of her other films, I don't feel like they do that. So she got to do a little bit of drama, a little bit of comedy, and she looks amazing. Those costumes are, oh my goodness, gorgeous.
I think maybe my issue is that they give the guy who clearly I think is the more fucked up one of the two of them so much runway. I'm like, this guy clearly is being resentful, is like, I don't want this, fuck marriage, la 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 la, and somehow she's being turned into the one who has changed him somehow, and that maybe just is the time of it all, but I'm glad in the end she when they're in the car kind of driving, and she's like, bitch, I'm here, what else do you want? But yeah, it's so fucking hard to get to that place.
No, and you're not wrong. And I think also that goes back to exactly what Chels was saying, that this becomes sort of the blueprint for a lot of other, because most independent romantic comedies that come after this are a lot from the male viewpoint.
He's managed to persuade you that it's absolutely imperative that we get to Saint-Tropez by the day before yesterday. Why do you always get taken in?
Oh, baby, that's how it is, okay? You want me not to work? Is that what you want? Just wish that you'd stop sniping.
I haven't said a word.
Just because you use a silencer doesn't mean you're not a sniper. We're not going on like this for the rest of our lives.
For my 5-star review, yes. I just really, really loved The Nun's Story. All the issues I had with, a lot of her stylish movies that didn't really have, to me at least, a lot underneath. The Nun's Story is the exact opposite, stripping away all of the style and just counting on her to tell this really emotional story that I thought was super engrossing and engaging. And I love that this movie knows exactly what it wants to do. From the very beginning, she has this monologue that's basically just sometimes you are called to do something. And that's all I need. I don't need any more motivation. And that sets up this entire story of this woman who feels this calling and this urge to not only serve as a health worker, but as a missionary, serve Jesus Christ. And I love you don't often, I think, get stories where faith is really tested, or people struggle with it in a very non-judgmental way. She is a normal human being. The idea that nuns are normal human beings and, can have these struggles, and she wants so badly to be a nun. She so badly wants to serve and be this type of person. And God, the part where the head nun or whatever asks her to fail her exams to show God,
humble herself.
Yes. I was this is so fucked up. And I'm so glad later in the movie, this other nun's that was fucked up. They should not have made you do that. But I don't know. The ending of this movie is so gorgeous and devastating. To see, she starts out as this optimistic, hopeful, full of faith woman, and then to end fully shaken, but also realizing that there's life beyond this. It's there's no music. It's so quiet. I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous movie, and also deals, I think, with racism and fucked up shit really, really well. She's why can't she wants to be in Africa helping these kids. She wants, and there's so much about this movie. I can't recommend this movie enough. And I think especially if you think that she's only about style and flash, I think this is just the perfect example of it's nah.
It's such a beautiful, beautiful film. And I think it was you, Chels, who put on your letterbox, like, if I could have seen this on the big screen. And I want to echo that 100% because it's also just an absolutely gorgeously made film.
Gorgeous.
It's such a beautiful film.
Yeah.
And like the whole time she is just struggling with these very basic obedience and humbling herself and trying to give herself over when all she wants to do is serve people and do good in the world. And like, she's constantly just tested all the time by the nuns around her. I think it's a really good way to damn Catholics, but also show their process.
Yeah.
Right.
As an ex-Catholic myself, I'm like, yes, I really love watching this and them showing you how horrible and hard it is for people to do this. And anytime she is in trouble for talking during the grand silence or somebody coming to talk to her, it's like, stop talking to her. Right. I was so stressed watching this film more than most of her other films. I was like so invested. It's so gorgeous.
Don't be proud of me, Father. This is really flight. It will be so much easier in the Congo to remember I'm nothing. There will be no worldly associations in the bush station, in the jungle.
And Hepburn said this is one of her favorite films that she made. Like, it's right at the top for her.
Absolutely. So my 5-star review is something completely different. And so we're gonna go to 1967's Wait Until Dark. I mentioned earlier Terrence Young directed. It's based off a play. It was produced by Mel Ferrer, so I guess he did do one good thing in his life. But
just the one. That's why I couldn't bunch all of them together for a 1-star.
She plays a character named Susie, who is a blind woman who is constantly pushing herself to be, what does she keep saying? The best blind girl in the entire world. And but she's left alone in her apartment by her boyfriend, future Alfred from Batman the Animated Series, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. And he as he goes away, she's left in her apartment with a doll that she is not aware contains heroin. She's being menaced by 2 con men and a full-out criminal that's played by Alan Arkin. We mentioned this earlier. And as the movie goes on, it gets darker and darker. Alan Arkin kills multiple people. He basically tortures this woman alone in her apartment. She eventually traps him by cutting out all the lights to make him as blind as she is. And she eventually gets the upper hand, or might not have the upper hand, depending on what happens. I will say there's a moment, this doesn't really spoil anything, but there's a moment where she stabs Alan Arkin. And to me, that was the moment that sold it for me, because before she stabs him, because she's playing a very realistic person, she's 100% a real human in this movie. Before she stabs him, she screams in pain. Like, she knows this thing that she's going to do is so awful, but she has no choice but to do it. And it's such a brilliant character choice. And as soon as I've seen this movie before, but as soon as I saw that, I was like, this is it. I was like, this is brilliant. This is a full on person that she played. And yeah, she's a bit stylish in the movie. And, you know, they did the light contacts to make her eyes look a little less popping on screen the way that they would, but you know, she's doing everything she can to shine through just the image of Audrey Hepburn, the fashion icon, and showing you that she is Audrey Hepburn, the actor. And I just really think it's a brilliant film, and it's also fucking scary. I know.
Surprise, surprise! Gavin's picking the scary movie.
Pick up the cane and tap on the floor right where you are, so I know where you are. Go on, tap. Tap. Keep tapping. Keep tapping. Keep tapping.
Were there any other movies that we wanted to just give quick shout-outs that we really liked?
I mean, I love Roman Holiday.
Yeah.
I love The Children's Hour. I feel like
I was back and forth on The Children's Hour and Wait Until Dark, and I decided to watch them back to back. And Wait Until Dark won out in the end, but The Children's Hour...
It's much more of a showcase for her. Yeah. I feel like Children's Hour, Shirley MacLaine really steals that. But yeah, they're both so good in that.
Yeah. The same. My 3 were going to be Roman Holiday, Children's Hour, and I famously love Charade.
Charade is such a bop.
It's a bop.
It is a bop.
She's a teeny bop girl. It's funny, I was thinking right now, like, man, of her, like, iconic, quote-unquote, roles, I think like Roman Holiday for me is like my favorite. Funny Face is like the next one in line that I would like say that I like the best. And then the other ones are just like, ugh.
So before we go into our fast forward, why don't we do our mixed reviews review? So my 1-star review was 1959's Green Mansions.
Mine was 1961's Breakfast at Tiffany's.
And mine was 1961's The Unforgiven.
My 5-star review was 1967's Wait Until Dark.
My 5-star review was 1959's The Nun Story.
And mine was 1967's Two for the Road.
Pew, pew, pew. So let's get into our fast forward. Anytime that we've done a subject who has left the mortal coil, it's sort of impossible for us to give like, oh, here's what we want from them. Here's the thing that they're doing next. But I do want to impart that on the way out, I want to say that if there's anything that you remember Audrey Hepburn for besides the style, is that she was such a giving, caring person. She was a woman who suffered severe trauma as a childhood that she never got over. And I think part of that led her to be such a generous, kind, and loving person that she felt she had to spread that wealth of humanity around. And so that's my idea of a fast forward to her, that if you are to remember her, don't only think of Breakfast at Tiffany's. Think of her as an actual person.
Yeah, I think it's, and I was just reading right now, she raised, and her organization, like there's the Audrey Hepburn Society that is chaired by her son. And that fund has created, they've raised almost $100 million to date, which is kind of an unfathomable amount of money. And it's her son says, she would always say, I take what I do seriously, but I do not take myself seriously. This is just someone who reminds me a lot of Viola Davis, and just kind of like having this really hard childhood. Also reminds me a lot of Cicely Tyson, and just how we are here on this earth to serve each other, and how she was doing everything she could to, one, not only have this family life and give her sons a normal childhood that she did not have, but then also fully recognizing, oh my goodness, I went through something horrific, and these horrific things are still happening today, and so I need to go out of my way to give and ensure that that's not something that continues. And the culture changed with Audrey Hepburn. Like, I don't think we can say that often with our subjects, like, but the cultural, like the look, the work, and the philanthropy, it's incredible. And it's there is a reason why she is the icon that she is. You cannot think of Hollywood without thinking of Audrey.
Yeah, there's just like, her sons have done such a great job keeping her memory alive and continuing the work. I even have it. Audrey's Little Daydream is a children's book, but it's a very dark children's book. It talks about her life during World War II as if she's a child, has to stay in bed, and she's daydreaming about what would become of her life. And it includes things like Breakfast at Tiffany's and Funny Face and the beautiful things she would do. So I'm really glad. It's a really dark children's book, but I kind of recommend it. Her son did that.
Beautiful things can come from ugly places, and I think that, if anything, that's maybe a great thing to take away from this and leaving Audrey behind, is just that, you can come from literally war-torn, be starving on the street, eating grass and flowers to sustain yourself, and you can still become the biggest star in the world and have this legacy continue for, ever. And to me, that's, she was a Hollywood star, but she wasn't, comparing her to like a Joan Crawford or other stars who were very particular about their Hollywood, and glamour and this and that. In the end, like you said, Gavin, she was fully just like, whatever we have to do this new thing that I'm doing right now is what's important. And to give away all her iconic dresses and things like that. It's just like, man, wow, what a woman. She really was just, once in a lifetime type of person. It's crazy.
And I think that's really what it's at. I don't know if there will ever be another quite like Audrey Hepburn. And
she died so young, 63. I'm really glad that you brought her to us, Chelsea, because I feel myself getting emotional. I feel myself feeling things about Audrey that I would not have before.
She's an incredible person, and I hope more people just do a little bit more research and look beyond the poster. Don't watch Breakfast at Tiffanys, maybe.
No, don't do it.
Like, it's go a little deeper, find some of the cooler things that she's done in her life, because she's amazing.
She had the range. She had the range. She had the range.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that beautifully wraps up Audrey Hepburn, and I'm so thankful that we had this chance to really spend the 2 weeks and really get to know her as more than a person. I don't want to be cliche and say, there's a new documentary that just came out about her called More Than an Icon, but I think that's
truly
beautiful way to memorialize her. But speaking of more than icons, Chelsea, this is our moment to let you plug your stuff. Thank you so much for being on our show. It's been really, really fantastic to have you here. It's been so much fun spending both this time with you and Audrey Hepburn. And this, tell us where we can find you online. Tell us all the 9,000 podcasts that you're on.
If I can remember them all. No, thank you so much. I've had so much fun talking and researching this and watching even things I haven't seen before. But you can find me talking about Audrey Hepburn on Twitter at Chelsea725. And then let me try to get through all these podcasts. Community Rewatch Podcast, where Gavin is a guest. He's upcoming. I don't know when that will be out.
Someday.
Follow us on Twitter. And then I have Those Gals Have Moxie. Thank you for the shout out. That's kind of where we just talk about pop culture and random things and movies and slander Ryan Murphy like I'm so good at.
Yeah, your guys' hatred of the remake of Rebecca has single-handedly kept me from watching it. So
don't watch it. And I love Lily James, but don't watch it. And then I have this new one, the Untitled Cinema Gals project, where Morgan, she's a reviewer. We just talk about all these different movies and subjects. We don't do deep dives like y'all on actresses. We figure out why Carey Mulligan doesn't have an Oscar or Amy Adams. We investigate and we get to some results. But yeah, go follow us. Find me you can see it all on my Twitter.
I do want to say your presence online is so necessary and sweet and just wonderful. And you're a youngin' and you give me hope. And so but I mean, Louis and I have had this conversation many, many times. Nobody's online persona is good. Like online personas are really bad, but yours is so nice and genuine and necessary. And I love every time I see you pop up on your feed, and you have such a unique voice online too. So just please stay you. It's perfect. You're perfect. So.
You're gonna make me cry, and I've already cried so much thinking about Audrey Hepburn. But I don't try.
That's the key.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're very good at it.
But no, y'all are wonderful and do wonderful work here. You're my favorite podcast, so I hoodwinked you.
Oh,
you did, yeah.
Oh, start. Love to undercut any moment of actual emotion. Speaking of undercutting any moment of actual emotion, if you want to contact us at The Mixed Reviews Online, you can find us on Twitter at The Mixed Reviews.
We're also on Facebook. Just type in The Mixed Reviews.
If you want to email us, you can email us at reviewsmixed@gmail.com. We're always taking suggestions.
If you want to see me reacting to watching movies on Instagram, you can find us at _mixed_reviews.
And if you want to listen to us the way that you have been doing this entire episode, please subscribe. We're on a plethora of podcast apps. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play Music. We're on Audible. We're on Amazon. We are everywhere.
You can't escape from us.
Absolutely not. And if you do listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please stop by and leave us a little 5-star rating and a nice little review, and we'll read it on the show like we did at the beginning of this episode.
Thank you guys so much. We hope you had a great Valentine's Day weekend.
Absolutely.
It was a long weekend as well. Hope you're surviving the cold weather, and we'll see you next time.
Drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. We're after
say